At 6 feet nothing and 205 pounds, Paul Coffey wasn't the biggest defenseman, but he was the fastest the NHL had ever seen. But even more than his 4 Stanley Cups, 14 All-Star selections, and 3 Norris trophies, Coffey changed how defensemen played hockey. He moved like a forward, but played defense. The skater was your favorite player's favorite defenseman. And even though coaches wanted him to stay back more and focus on defense, in 1986, he produced one of the greatest offensive seasons by a defenseman in NHL history, nearly breaking Bobby Orr's scoring record.
24-year-old Paul Coffey shatters Bobby Orr's record. Incredible!
If you love hockey legends like Paul Coffey, make sure to hit that subscribe button and give this video a like. It helps us bring you more stories of the NHL's greatest players. And trust me, you'll want to stick around to see how this skinny defenseman changed hockey forever. In this video, we'll talk about Coffey's best years, how the Oilers turned from promising to dominant with his help, and how Coffey reached hockey immortality as part of the greatest dynasty of the 1980s. It all started while Paul was still playing junior hockey in Ontario. The Edmonton Oilers had been struggling since joining the NHL in 1979. Despite having young Wayne Gretzky already showing signs of greatness, the team was still learning how to win at the highest level. But after they won just 28 games in the 1979-80 season, there was hope on the horizon when the Oilers picked 6th overall in the 1980 draft. That selection would change hockey forever and give Gretzky the perfect partner to launch the next great NHL dynasty. The 1980 draft was loaded with talent, producing future Hall of Famers and NHL stars. But the Oilers' choice at number 6 was a game changer. They went for a skinny defenseman from the Kitchener Rangers despite questions about his defensive commitment. There were not many questions about Coffey's skating, though. From the first moment he stepped on NHL ice, there was no doubt this guy was the fastest defenseman the league had ever seen. Even as a rookie, Coffey put fear in opponents' hearts because nobody could keep up with him. Coffey could go end-to-end with the puck, turn on the jets, and blow past checkers like they were standing still. Plus, despite being labeled an offensive defenseman, Coffey had a long reach, quick stick, and when needed could deliver solid hits. If you tried to intimidate him, he'd use his speed to make you pay on the scoreboard again and again. In his NHL debut season, Coffey scored 32 points, which showed promise but was just a glimpse of what was coming. By his second season, he nearly doubled his output with 61 points. But the most memorable moment of his early career came in his third season when he exploded for 29 goals and 96 points. This wasn't just good for a defenseman, it was unheard of for anyone not named Bobby Orr. He helped the young Oilers reach the Stanley Cup Finals that year, though they fell to the more experienced New York Islanders. But everyone in hockey knew something special was brewing in Edmonton with Coffey rushing the puck from the back end. But Coffey's relationship with Oilers coach Glenn Sather was complicated. Sather was a tough, old-school hockey man who had played over 600 NHL games as a hard-nosed winger. As a coach, he believed in letting skilled players use their talent, but also demanded defensive accountability. When he got Coffey, he found a defenseman who wanted to play like a forward, a guy who would rather join the rush than hang back, and who sometimes left his defensive partner alone to face odd-man rushes. It was a match that required patience, and it didn't take long for the coach and the star defenseman to have their differences. The defensive zone is still part of the ice surface. Sather would often remind Coffey during film sessions, "We can't win championships with defensemen who only want to score goals." But Coffey was confident in his approach and didn't appreciate being held back. He knew that his speed allowed him to recover even when he took chances. When other defensemen practiced breakout passes, Coffey would practice his slap shot, which eventually became one of the hardest in the NHL, regularly clocked at over 95 miles per hour. He'd show up for practice, but his mind was on creating offense, not perfecting defensive positioning. Still, with more experience and Sather's guidance, Coffey improved his all-around game. In his first season, he was -9 in the plus-minus rating. By his fourth year, he was +52, showing major defensive improvement, while still putting up huge offensive numbers. His decision-making improved as Sather pushed him to pick his spots more carefully. "Last year, I joined the rush every time I saw a chance," Coffey said in 1984. "Now I have to think about the situation. The scorer who we're playing against, who's on the ice." The balance was paying off. The Oilers were now not just an exciting young team, but a legitimate Stanley Cup contender with Coffey anchoring their transition game and power play. However, in 1984, Coffey couldn't be reined in anymore, not even by Sather. The coach finally embraced Coffey's unique abilities and turned him loose. Coffey started jumping into the play constantly, sometimes even leading rushes like a forward. He racked up an astonishing 126 points with 37 goals, numbers that forwards would envy. The offensive output was the second highest ever by a defenseman, trailing only Bobby Orr's 139 points in 1970-71. Most importantly, the Oilers captured their first Stanley Cup, ending the New York Islanders' 4-year dynasty. Coffey was a force in those playoffs, scoring 8 goals and 22 assists in just 19 games, shattering the previous scoring record for a defenseman in a single playoff run. In the 1984-85 season, the Oilers became an unstoppable machine. Coffey's offensive game reached another level when he scored 121 points and won his first Norris Trophy as the NHL's best defenseman. In the playoffs, he was even better. Against Chicago in the conference finals, Coffey was unstoppable, gliding past forecheckers and creating scoring chances on almost every shift. In a pivotal Game 4, he scored 2 goals, including a coast-to-coast rush where he beat 3 Blackhawks players before firing a wrist shot past the goalie. Oilers teammates sometimes just stopped and watched in awe when Coffey wound up from his own end. As teammate Mark Messier said after one spectacular rush, "When Paul gets that look in his eye, just get open and prepare for the puck. He's going to beat everybody else on the ice." The 1985-86 season would be Coffey's absolute peak. He scored an incredible 48 goals, a record for a defenseman that still stands today, and finished with 138 points, a remarkable achievement that placed him among the all-time greats. His skating was so effortless that he sometimes appeared to be floating above the ice. Coffey's performance redefined what was possible from the defenseman position, showcasing his incredible speed and scoring ability. However, in the playoffs that year, the Oilers were stunned when rookie goalie Steve Smith accidentally scored on his own net in Game 7 against Calgary. This freak goal eliminated Edmonton in the division finals, preventing what could have been a third straight cup. Despite this team disappointment, Coffey won his second consecutive Norris Trophy, cementing his status as the game's premier defenseman. But then, a shock. During the 1987 season, contract disputes and tension with management led to Coffey holding out for the first 21 games. When he returned, things weren't the same. Finally, in November 1987, a blockbuster trade sent Coffey to the Pittsburgh Penguins. Oilers fans were stunned that their beloved defenseman was gone, but management felt his salary demands were too high. Coffey was devastated. "I never thought I'd leave Edmonton," he said at the time. "We built something special there." In 7 seasons with the Oilers, Coffey had scored 209 goals, 460 assists, and won 3 Stanley Cups. His departure marked the beginning of the end for the Oilers dynasty. In Pittsburgh, Coffey found himself paired with another generational talent, Mario Lemieux. Their chemistry was instant and electric. In his first full season with the Penguins, 1988-89, Coffey scored 113 points and was runner-up for the Norris Trophy. On March 14, 1989, during a game against the Hartford Whalers, Coffey wrote himself into the record books by recording his 310th career goal, surpassing Dennis Potvin to become the highest-scoring defenseman in NHL history at that time. Even more impressive, he reached 1,000 career points in just 770 games, the fastest defenseman to reach that milestone by a wide margin. Only 9 forwards in NHL history reached 1,000 points faster than Coffey. Coffey's time in Pittsburgh culminated in the 1991 Stanley Cup run. By now, he was 30 years old and had adjusted his game, picking spots more carefully and using his hockey IQ to compensate for even the slightest decline in speed. In the conference finals against Boston, Coffey was a difference maker. In Game 6, with the Penguins facing elimination, he logged nearly 32 minutes of ice time and controlled the pace of the entire game. His outlet pass to Lemieux in the second period sparked a crucial goal in Pittsburgh's 4-2 win. In Game 7, Coffey made one of the most important defensive plays of his career, diving to break up a 2-on-1 Boston rush late in the third period to preserve a 1-goal lead. The Penguins advanced and went on to win the Cup, giving Coffey his 4th championship with his second team, something only a handful of players have ever accomplished. Yes, Paul Coffey went on to play for 7 more teams after Pittsburgh, winning individual awards but never lifting the cup again. His career total of 1,531 points ranks second all-time among defensemen, only behind Ray Bourque. His 48 goals in a season remains the record for defensemen that nobody has come close to breaking. More than his stats, Coffey changed how teams use defensemen forever. Every offensive defenseman today, from Erik Karlsson to Cale Makar, follows the path Coffey blazed. While some critics pointed to his occasional defensive lapses, his plus 294 career rating proves he was far from a liability. As Wayne Gretzky once said, Paul didn't just join the rush, he was the rush. That's why he's still considered by many as the greatest skating defenseman who ever played the game. Thanks for watching. If you liked this one, there's plenty more where this came from, so click on this video next.